Chipo, thank you so much for joining us in Palermo for the Medor Talks. I'm delighted to have you here today and over the last couple of days while we've had this amazing convening of this very impressive international board. So thank you for being in Palermo.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me.
So I wanted to kick off by talking a little bit about governance and the troubles that we are facing in advancing political agendas. This is obviously not unique to Zambia or to Africa. I think around the world, politicians, civil servants, diplomats are constantly talking about the red tape that they face and the bureaucracy that they face, and sort of how it can slow down when there are ambitious agendas. And so as somebody who's serving in government and in a specific role for advancing political agendas, what are your kind of thoughts and recommendations for politicians all over the world and civil servants who are facing those obstacles and need to empower themselves to keep going with advancing the policies of the country?
Thank you very much for that very important question. And for someone who, in my role as policy advisor to the President of Zambia, President Hakainde Hichilema, who came into office about 4 years ago now, first time in office, not just himself as president, but the party which he comes from was also first time in office. You can only begin to imagine the challenges that we've had to deal with the bureaucracy, a system that goes many, many years back. But this is where you have to give reference to the type of leadership that President Hakainde Hichilema has shown in finding innovative ways through the bureaucracy. So innovative, introducing innovation in public service delivery. And one key tool that I would recommend, which he's used, is that he introduced the first ever presidential delivery unit in Zambia, for which I was quite instrumental to setting up, and I served as the deputy head of the presidential delivery unit for the first 2 years of its inception. And this presidential delivery unit outlined the top priorities of the president and government in particular, and have zoned in and focused to cut through the bureaucracy on seeing through that presidential priorities, directives, instructions, and projects have someone on a day-to-day basis following them from policy pronouncement all the way to implementation, to delivery, supporting whether it's the private sector, whether it's people within government who need to get things done. Another tool that he introduced that I would recommend, an innovative tool, was the PPDF, which is the Public-Private Dialogue Forum. Again, I was quite instrumental in the setting up of that. This is, for lack of a better expression, like the official complaint box. Yeah. For the private sector, where if they have issues, if they want some policy reform, legislation review, or they just have some bureaucratic challenges within government, they're able to come to a place called the PPDF and make a submission, and if it's something that just takes a phone call, etc., to be sorted immediately. But if it's something of a policy review or legislation review, they have power to convene all the relevant stakeholders, both from the private sector side and from the public sector side, to come into one room, table the issue, thrash out the issues, work out the solution, and submit it to the president and his cabinet for approval for an ongoing process if it needs the legislation to change. But before this, these tools never existed. So you just had people complaining, the bureaucracy is, strangling us, this is not working. So I think you have to be very open-minded. You have to introduce innovative tools, to cut through the bureaucracy, even as you work on the long-term civil service reform, because you also understand that that is not something that happens overnight, but you also want to be able to deliver and show results immediately. So I think Zambia, the current president has done quite well from that perspective, and I'm fortunate to be part of the team that's seeing those solutions through.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's really, I mean, there's a few words that really stood out there. I mean, I think delivery, just as a word and as a unit, is so important because it shows accountability, it shows that there's a vision, it shows that there's an implementation plan, and not just sort of ideas and vague goals, but a real concrete delivery unit dedicated to actualizing and realizing.
And tracking the progress.
Exactly, and tracking the progress and allowing for these measurements of success to be communicated effectively to the citizens, which really helps with, you know, the citizens also feeling like they understand where the government is going and they understand what this roadmap is. So I think absolutely for governance, that seems really, really key. And the other word that stood out is innovative, you know, because the world is changing very, very fast. And the idea that these government structures have to be adapting and innovating and being ready to be flexible to whatever is going to work best, I think is a really a strong point. And I'm always a big fan of PPPs as well. I think it never really makes sense to me in countries where you see the private sector and the public sector pitted against each other when actually everyone's working towards the same goals.
Absolutely, and that's also something else the president has pushed very hard, triple Ps, PPPs, public-private partnerships, as an innovative tool, again, to finance and fund projects for a country that's undergoing a debt restructuring, but you still have to bring online infrastructure projects. So you can see the innovativeness in trying to deliver public services to the people.
And very solution-oriented, which is fantastic. On that note of this kind of changing global order and lots in flux at this moment, how do you see the power of regional blocs such as SADC and the role that they can play in the increasing importance of Africa as a continent in the future global order?
Regional blocs are very key. I mean, we've seen the successes of others like the European Union before here. We've seen some in the eastern part of the world as well. And Africa is of no exception. And whilst we have the regional blocs, ECOWAS, SADC, etc., there's also the greater bloc of the AU. We are now talking about the AFCT from a trade perspective. But let me zone it more closer to home in terms of SADC and the role Zambia is playing in that integration from an economic perspective. So you find that as far as we are concerned, and the president has been very big on this, is that Zambia is the logistical hub of the region. The President Hakainde Hichilema, has been pushing for more integration on the interconnectors for energy access, availability, and supply, for example. So we are now working on the Zambia-Tanzania interconnector, for instance, that connects Southern Africa into East Africa. There's also the Southern Power Pool interconnector coming from South Africa, Namibia, Malawi. There will also be another interconnector into Angola, and this will strengthen the region in terms of energy supply and sovereignty. At the same time, those interconnectors, not only on energy, we're also looking on the petroleum side. So there will be pipelines that are being worked on, and very interesting, they all cross through Zambia. But you cannot have those, that magnitude of projects if you are not integrated as a region. And you can see that when one country is strong, the next will be stronger. So these are some of the regional projects. I think from an economic perspective, we have shifted now from just being integrated from a political perspective, trying to push for independence and freedom. I think the next thing that the new crop of leaders, such as President Hakainde Hichilema, is pushing is that of economic development and viability. So we are seeing a lot of these interconnected projects. We also have other projects in the region, such as the Lobito corridor, which is crucial not just for the US and also the EU, because they're significant investors in that. Other regional projects that we have, for example, ourselves as a mining country, we have an MOU between Zambia and the DRC, being that we're the top 2 biggest producers of copper on the continent. And mind you, 10% of the world's copper is in Africa. 30% of proven critical minerals in the world right now are on the African continent. So we are already collaborating as mining countries on this, which puts us in a stronger position to leverage our competitive advantage and to be able to trade and support the rest of the world as we undergo a global transition, a global energy transition.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Lobito corridor that you mentioned as well, it's such a fundamental part of the Matei Plan and part of why we're in Palermo and the purpose of MEDOR is to really advance the dialogue and the cooperation for these types of initiatives, which are really fundamentally based on partnerships that can mutually benefit all of the parties involved. And and as the continent, you mentioned the prevalence of the critical minerals in Africa, which is very rich in these minerals, but also rich in people. And 10% of the world is going to be born in Nigeria by 2050. And I think the world is waking up to the importance and the power of the African continent. And I believe very much in these regional blocs as a unified voice for that shift. Lastly, I just wanted to ask a little bit about kind of the next generation of politicians. It's been a global trend and definitely something that I've noticed, that younger people feel a little bit more disillusioned with politics, and that they've seen international law, humanitarian crises, a lot of these institutions that we grew up with for multilateralism not fulfilling the agendas that they've been propagating for a long time. And so how do you feel as a leader yourself in politics that you could inspire that next generation to be engaged and to fulfill a civic duty?
First of all, I think I need inspiration myself.
We all do.
But notwithstanding that, as also a young person who's been on President Hakainde Hichilema's team even before he became president, so in opposition, I've learned a little bit maybe that I can share. And I'm fortunate, I don't take that for granted, that I was given the opportunity or allowed the space to volunteer on his team, is that as young people, we should also be willing to learn. We should also be willing to put ourselves forward, that no one is going to come and call us or make space at the table for us to sit. We should put ourselves out there and be willing to learn and be humble enough to be teachable.
Yes.
So whilst we think we know stuff, and having been even younger before, all of us have been, there comes a stage where you think you know everything.
Yeah.
But the truth is, even as we have more energy, the times have changed, we are more enlightened with technology as young people, we should also recognize the fact that those who've come before us have also seen a lot, and they have a lot of experience which we can learn from. It is true also that to know there's an African proverb, I think it's a Zambian proverb, I just to correct myself, in that for you to know where you're going, you have to know where you're coming from. So you should appreciate the history and teachings and knowledge of those who've come before us and the older ones. But at the same time, the older generation need to recognize that the younger people have got a lot of energy, they have got innovative solutions and proposals that could actually shift the development needle faster and much wider, and they are hungry to participate. And we've seen some of these countries allowing for that. We've seen some reshuffles where we've seen younger people, we've seen new governments. We have friends who are serving as ministers who are much younger, but we shouldn't think someone is going to hand it over to us on a silver platter. And this is why I speak quite highly of my boss, that he's allowed a lot of young people to be around him. The State House in Zambia, most of us below or around the age of 40 or below that. I mean, I joined very, very, very young myself. So I think that it's about putting yourself forward and showing your capability. And you won't be given a seat at the table because you are young or because you're a woman. You should be capable. We should earn our stripes, and work extremely hard. This work of governance and politics, it's no different from any other profession or career in terms of you have to put in the hard work. And I often say that it takes 10 years to get 10 years experience. There's just no way around it. You have to put in the time, know. So again, get involved, volunteer, ask questions, learn, be part of it all, especially if you see yourself playing a role one day soon in the near future.
It's a very inspiring message to young people, and I completely agree. Keeping an open mind, and I love your point as well about we need to also, as young people, respect that there was generations that built these diplomatic institutions up to where we are, and we have lots of lessons to learn from them. And yes, lots has changed and is changing, and we're in the face of a lot of that. But equally, I personally believe also, the foundations of old school diplomacy is based on respect. I actually looked up the word recently just before I came here because I wanted to talk a little bit about this evolution of diplomacy. And the definition that came up was an art of dealing with people with respect and tactfulness. And I think it would be fabulous if the world came together back on that version of diplomacy in a modern way.
And if we talk a little bit more about respect, I'll share a personal story. So my dad actually taught me this, that there's a difference between respect and fear.
Yes.
Okay? So we shouldn't be fearful as young people. We should have courage, but we should be respectful, even as we have the courage. So there's a difference between respect and fear. So respectful, but we should have the courage, because leadership requires courage.
What a fabulous note to end on. Thank you so much, Chipo. I really appreciate you taking the time for Meadowar Talks.
No, thank you very much for having me. Thank you.